Hello, my name is Lauren Neighbors, and welcome to the online workshop, Scripting, Creating Social Scripts That Work. So like I said, my name is Lauren Neighbors. I am an autism resource specialist here at Project Access. If you're unfamiliar with what Project Access is, we are housed at Missouri State University and we are funded by DESE. So it is our job to provide resources to teachers, paras, administrators, and school districts in the state of Missouri to help them accommodate their learners with autism. So go ahead and double check that you have already taken the pretest. If you have not taken the pretest already, go ahead and do so. You should take the pretest, do the workshop or listen to this presentation, then do your homework activity, and then do your post-test. So you'll need to complete and pass all of those things before you receive your certificate for completing the scripting workshop. It will also take 1 to 2 business days after completing the workshop to get your certificate, because that part is manually entered. So I will go through and grade all of your assignments and your tests and then make sure that you passed, and then I will provide you with your certificate. So again, make sure you complete everything before asking for your certificate, because a lot of times we run into, hey, I didn't get my certificate. Well, sometimes you just forgot to complete the pre-test or the post-test, or even the assignment. So this is your reminder that every step of this needs to be completed before receiving that certificate. The learning objectives for this workshop are: participants will identify goals that may be appropriately addressed with scripting. Participants will be able to identify the necessary steps to implement scripting with fidelity. Participants will practice writing a script for an identified student on their caseload for immediate use in the classroom. So you'll get that hands-on experience throughout this course. So before we can do scripting or implement scripting within our classroom, we have to have an understanding of what scripting is. So scripts are typically visual supports that help students and learners with autism navigate initiating conversation and maintaining conversation with peers, adults, unfamiliar and familiar communication partners. Scripts can also be used to supply some type of replacement behavior, so showing students and learners what more appropriate way to respond or initiate a conversation would look like. Scripts can be used in all types of different environments, such as work, home, school, implementing different types of routines. You can use them with differing abilities and different ages, so you can even use them with an adult, for example, learning to communicate with their coworkers. I like to look at scripts as playing out the tape of what appropriate conversation would look like and what the end result might look like as well. So we're going to discuss why. Why use scripting within your classroom or with your learner? The first thing is that it capitalizes on their strengths. So no, our learners might not be super confident right now in their ability to initiate or sustain conversation. However, we do know that our learners respond well to visual cues or visual supports. So that's what a script is. It's that visual support that learners need to feel confident in initiating or maintaining conversation. It's evidence-based, which is also extremely important. Scripting has been proven to work in several group studies as well as single case studies. So you want to choose an intervention that's going to work. And we have the data to back up the fact that scripting does work. So if it's something that you haven't tried yet, it's definitely something that you would be able to try because it has worked and been proven to work in the past. It is useful across multiple different ages and outcomes. Scripting can work with a 5-year-old and it can also work with an 18-year-old. So you might need to tweak the script itself to accommodate that learner at whatever age they are at. You wouldn't want to give an 18-year-old a script that would be useful for a 5-year-old because they run in different social settings and they might have different communication abilities. It is also a low-cost intervention. It is minimal cost for you to create a script. We're going to talk about different kinds of scripts and what scripts look like. So you should be able to create one yourself and implement it within your classroom, and we're going to talk about how to do that. If you are also struggling with creating the script itself, feel free to reach out to Project Access or check out our website because we have tons of free resources, and that is our job, and that's what we're here for. So if you are having a hard time creating a script or don't know where to start, feel free to reach out to the contact information that was posted at the beginning of this presentation. So next we're going to talk about when to implement social scripts. Social scripts can be implemented in tons of different environments. There's also tons of goals that can be addressed using social scripts. One of those areas is socio-dramatic play. This is typically targeted with the preschool or early elementary age group, but you can also see it in more of that secondary age group during things like the bus ride or lunchtime, those more unstructured environments. You can use social scripts to practice initiating a conversation. How do you initiate a conversation with peers? If you want to be engaged with a group or just a singular peer, how do you go up to them and talk to them and get them engaged in that conversation? You can use social scripts to teach a learner how to request things that they might need and get their needs met. You can teach social scripts or use social scripts to teach joint attention. So being able to talk about multiple different things with multiple different partners, to be able to look at something and talk about it together, having that joint attention skill that most of our learners with autism might have deficits in that area. So using a social script to teach what is joint attention and how do you participate in a joint attention conversation. And then that regular conversational skills. So that back and forth flow of a conversation. How do you end a conversation? A lot of times learners with autism might just walk away when they're done with a conversation, or they might not know how to pick up on cues when someone else is finished with the conversation. So teaching them the natural back and forth flow and how to appropriately end a conversation. So those overarching or overall conversational skills. So scripting is an evidence-based practice that is commonly paired with other evidence-based practices. We talked about how scripts are typically a visual cue or visual prompt for our learners to make correct responses in social situations. So we can talk about prompting as a whole. A lot of times you'll want to use the script as a prompt in itself. So this is an example of a fading script prompt. So the idea here is that you're wanting the learner to appropriately initiate play with its peer. So you might start out teaching the learner the full phrase, "Can I play with you?" And you're going to pair that with this visual prompt. As the learner becomes more independent and more successful utilizing that full phrase, you're going to pair it back a little more. And as they continue to be successful with that, eventually that visual prompt of just the picture alone will be successful, and then they will be eventually independent and being able to initiate play with their peer. But just like any skill acquisition or behavior change, you're going to want to find a reinforcement that works. So reinforcement is anything that's going to increase the likelihood that that behavior will happen again. So if you're reinforcing your student with a Skittle or an M&M and your student's not continuing to initiate using the prompt you're providing, then they're probably not super reinforced by the reinforcer that you have provided. So it's really important that you figure out what our students like, what they're interested in, and what's reinforcing to them, and then providing that to them when they make a correct response. So for some students, yes, it might be a Skittle or an M&M, but other students might just be reinforced of the fact that the student said, "Yes, because you asked nicely, I'll play with you." So again, it changes from student to student or person to person. The reason why we as adults do the things that we do today are because we have been reinforced somewhere along the line. So reinforcement is extremely important. If you'd like to learn more about reinforcement, we have a whole other workshop about reinforcement, so I encourage you to check that out. Peer-mediated instruction and structured playgroups are just the use of peers in teaching these skills. So again, if we're wanting to practice appropriate social interactions, you can set up contrived scenarios where the learner has the opportunity to practice their skill and be reinforced in it. And it's more setting up the opportunity or providing that learner with the opportunity using same age or similar peers. So the thing with scripting in comparison to other interventions is that scripting is pretty useful for most other people. You don't have to be of a certain cognitive ability or verbal ability. You can use a script and accommodate it to any learner on the spectrum. So that might look like just full word scripts, or it can be paired with a picture and a small phrase. You could even use just pictures for our learners who aren't ready to read. you can supply maybe some type of electronic device that will read the script to the learner to prompt them in the certain social situations. But scripting overall can be used for any age or any ability. So I think that's the really cool thing about utilizing scripts and why they can be super beneficial within the classroom, is that there's generally no prerequisites that you have to have before you start introducing scripts within your classroom. So super helpful evidence-based practice that is generally pretty inexpensive. So that's why we recommend scripts, and that's why we're talking about scripts and how they can be helpful, because not only are they pretty low cost, but they're also pretty general in the audience that they help target. So we're going to talk about how we implement social scripts. The first thing you're going to want to do is identify the goal of the script. What are we wanting our student to learn? What social situations could a social script benefit them? So we're going to figure that out. Then you're going to write the goal for the script. What are we wanting to achieve here? Is this goal a SMART goal? If you're unfamiliar with how to write a goal or what a SMART goal is, I encourage you to check out our workshop that has to do with all of that. Because writing goals is really important to make sure we're being specific enough and it's targeting that specific student and it's not super general. Then you're going to want to identify the type and the length of the script. So again, scripts can be used for different ages and different abilities, and that's amazing. However, if we're implementing a social script with a certain student, you want to make sure that it's fitting that student's ability. So if a student doesn't have the ability to read written words, we're not going to want a script that's fully written words or written phrases. You want to make sure that you include pictures or visuals if that's what that student needs as well. Then you're going to develop the script utilizing the type and length that you identified, and then you're going to gather and organize your materials to be prepared to implement the script. Next, you're going to identify and train that communication partner. So I would start out with a more familiar communication partner and teach that communication partner the correct response or the response they're going to make when your student utilizes their social script with them. Next, you're going to practice. Set up contrived situations or scenarios where your learner can practice utilizing their social script. This is where you're going to learn, or your student's going to start to learn, the distinction between when they use their social script and what happens. So that's why you're going to also want to reinforce it. So we talked about having a reinforcer that works, how to choose a reinforcer that works. But if your student isn't reinforced for utilizing their social script, then they're not going to continue to use it in the future. So that's why reinforcing it is really important. And the last thing you're going to do is monitor. Is this working? Is the social script working? Is the student being able to process what the social script is supposed to do? Are they making correct responses? If they are not, what do we need to change? And if they are, what do we need to keep doing? So all of these steps together will ultimately teach how to use social scripts within your classroom or with your learner. So we're going to practice writing a social script. So the first thing I want you to do is think about a student or choose a student that you think might benefit from a social script. So next you're going to identify the goal for the script. So for example, if you're a 5th grade teacher, social situations or social skills for a 5th grade learner, what does that look like? You want to make sure that your goal is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. So making sure that this script is relevant to the student. If you're working with 5th grade, you wouldn't want to write a social script for a student who is in middle school or high school, right? So you want to make sure that the goal is relevant to the student, that you have a way to measure it, understand that if it's working or if it's not working. So I would like you to go ahead, after you've identified your student, I want you to write down what is the goal for this student. What are we wanting them to achieve? And kind of jot down a simple goal that you think that your student would be able to accomplish utilizing social scripts. So the next thing you're going to do is identify the type and the length of the script. You're going to want to consider your student's receptive and expressive language ability. Expressive being how they communicate. So do they use spoken language or do they use some type of AAC? The next thing is receptive language. Is your student able to utilize visual cues or verbal cues. What does that look like for them? Do they process that appropriately? This Affirm module will go through different types of receptive and expressive language, so it's a great tool to utilize in the future. This might seem like a small detail, but if they miss this area, then you're going to have a hard time utilizing the social script as a whole. So putting our social script that we're writing to the side, we're going to practice what we talked about on the last few slides. So we're going to determine whether more information is needed about the learner's language skills. So scenario 1, Ollie is a 4-year-old boy with ASD in an integrated preschool classroom. He plays alone in the class centers rather than interacting with other students nearby. His teacher would like to develop a script that will help Ollie interact with other students in the dramatic play center. Ollie speaks fluently in full sentences. So I would say yes, more information is needed. Although Ollie does speak fluently in full sentences, we know nothing about his receptive language. So we're going to want to present a social script that works for him. So he should be able to look at the social script and process the information and respond appropriately using expressive language. But if we're presenting a script that's not meeting his receptive language ability, the script in of itself is not going to be useful. The next scenario is Lindsay is a 12-year-old student with ASD in a self-contained middle school classroom. Her teacher would like to use a script to help Lindsay initiate interactions with other students at her lunch table. Lindsay uses a voice output device to communicate. So there's a couple different things. It does say that Lindsay uses a voice output device to communicate. So we need to make sure that this social script is fitting to her expressive communication needs. So is Lindsay's ability on the voice output device, is she able to use full sentences, or do we just need to use phrases? Are the visual supports that are going to be on the script going to be something that she can use on her voice output device? When we write it, are we including the fact that she even uses the voice output device to communicate? And then again, we want to target her receptive language. So making sure that social script is fitting to what Lindsay can handle receptively. So is she able to process the information on the script and then appropriately respond? So now we're going to develop the script. So we're going to look at a couple of different things. We're going to look at developing scripts for the learner and then developing scripts for peers and learners. So peers also might need a script to make those correct responses when a learner implements some type of social script. So this is an example of a script that a teacher put together for her student Lucas. Lucas loves talking about space. He struggles with starting conversations about other topics. His teacher developed a script for him to use to ask his peers questions about movies. So Lucas receives the questions and he's able to use this to talk to his peers about movies. So his teacher picked the topic and here are some conversation starters. So what is your favorite movie? Why do you like this movie? What is your favorite part? And what movie would you like to see next? So these are kind of ways that help facilitate that back and forth flow of conversation and help Lucas initiate conversation so he can interact with his peers. We actually on the Project Access website have some conversation starters that you can download for free. So I encourage you to also check out Project Access because we might already have similar social scripts already made for you. So this is a social script example for a learner that might have differing receptive or expressive language abilities. This also might be great for a learner who utilizes some type of AAC or speech output device, helping them understand what types of buttons they need to press to say, I need a break, or I want a turn, please. So this is just another example of utilizing a social script. This one specifically pairs the phrase with some type of visual. This is an example of a script for a learner if they are a communication partner. So Hannah is a high school student. Her target behavior is to request help when working in a group with peers. Her teacher developed the following script for Hannah and a peer to use during group activities when Hannah appears to be having a difficult time. So you can see here that the script has what the peer should say or how they should initiate this communication with Hannah, and what Hannah's response should be. This isn't necessary if you have a learner that has the ability to keep up or pick up on different types of pick up on the fact that if Hannah is having a difficult time. So that wouldn't necessarily be something that you have to have if your peer is able to do that independently. But if you have more elementary kiddos that are working or practicing being a peer-mediated instructor, having a script for them as well is just another way to prompt them to have that successful social interaction. So this is just an example of having a script for both the learner and a peer in the same situation. So this is the same thing, just accommodating for the learner's receptive or expressive language ability. So this is using a visual as well as pairing that with the word or phrase. So now we're going to put all the steps together and actually write a social script. So this is going to be your first assignment. So thinking back to that student that might be able to benefit from a social script, you're going to write a social script for that student and then submit it to Blackboard. You can do that at the completion of the full workshop, or you can pause the workshop here and go submit your social script in the assignments folder. So that is completely up to you. But don't worry about writing a perfect social script. The idea here is that we have the bones and we're going to practice writing this script together. So you're not going to be graded on whether it's a good social script or not. I don't expect you to be experts in writing social scripts currently. But I do want you to kind of practice, okay, how can I structure a social script for my specific learner? If your learner does not have the appropriate expressive or receptive language abilities for a full written script, please provide those visual supports as well. So you can use symbol sticks or different types of graphics that you feel like your learner might be receptive to. So just making sure that your social script is actually fitting the student that you have in mind, because if you're actually wanting to implement a social script, this will be a great start for that student. And then if you practice or implement it, you'll be able to take data and understand whether your social script is working or not and what you might need to fix. So this will be a great starting point if you're really wanting to implement social scripts with a specific learner or group. It's really important that you gather and organize your materials. You want to be ready and prepared for when this script is implemented. Are there going to be handout hard copies needing to be printed? Do you need a specific communication partner, and if so, is that person available for that student? Do you need specific toys or materials for when this script is implemented? You want the student to understand that when they initiate conversation or when they meet this goal using the social script, that the correct response is going to happen. If you aren't prepared, then an incorrect response might happen and the student might not understand what the social script is supposed to do and what even the point is of using the social script if there's incorrect responses. So next we're going to identify and train communication partners. We mentioned peer-mediated instruction as an evidence-based practice that pairs well with social scripts, and that is absolutely true. We've also looked at peer scripts themselves on how we can use them or write them to help our peers or communication partners respond appropriately. It's really important that we train our communication partners because they're going to help our target student learn these social skills, behavioral skills, or communication skills. So we want to make sure that they have appropriate training so they make correct responses and so that the social scripts in of themselves end up working. And we also want to train them on what happens if the social scripts don't go as planned and how the student should respond in those situations. When monitoring the script, it's important that, yes, we take data on the script use itself. That might be where we start out, of whether the student is able to successfully utilize the script to make appropriate social responses. However, it's important to keep in mind that we are targeting a certain skill or behavior through script intervention. So we need to be taking data on that target behavior as well as script use. It's really important that we also look at things like the environment or the communication partner and also take data on the level of prompting needed to utilize the script. We really want to keep our data in line and in organized fashion so we know whether the intervention is working or not working. So for assignment number 2, we're going to practice taking data. So we are going to watch a video of a social script being implemented, and then we're going to go over the data that we took over that video. And then we're going to watch a second video, and then that's going to be your opportunity to take data on that video and that social script intervention. And then that assignment is what you're going to turn into the assignments folder on Blackboard.